The first sign was never a sentence. It was a half second of silence after you mentioned you'd closed on a second property. A silence just a beat too long, followed by someone changing the subject to sports scores. You almost missed it. That's the thing about this particular kind of loss. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives disguised as nothing. You are Nathan, late 30s, the kind of self-made that never had a single dramatic turning point. No inheritance, no lottery ticket, no startup exit that made headlines. What you built slowly in a way that's almost embarrassing to explain at a party. Because I didn't buy things for 11 years isn't a story anyone wants to hear twice. A 2023 study from the Federal Reserve found that the median American household saves less than 5% of income annually, and you decided early on to live like that statistic didn't apply to you. Not through some genius insight, through the much less interesting method of automating 30% of every paycheck into index funds before you ever saw the money, and simply refusing to notice its absence. You stayed in the same one bedroom for 6 years. After you could have afforded to move, you drove a car with 140,000 miles on it to meetings with people who validated Teslas. None of it photographed well. None of it made a good story. And somewhere around year 8, the compounding started doing something your effort alone never could, and the gap between your life and the lives of the people who'd known you since your 20s became impossible to ignore. Not because you changed how you dressed. You still wear the same plain jacket, still show up 10 minutes early, still leave a party without making an exit out of it. From the outside, almost nothing about you is different. But something underneath shifted completely. You stopped flinching at a surprise bill. You stopped saying yes to plans you couldn't actually afford, just to avoid an awkward moment. And people can feel that shift in you before they can name it, which turns out to be exactly what makes it unsettling for them. It shows up first at a dinner you've had 100 times before. Same restaurant, same group, same easy rhythm of complaints about work and updates about relationships. Someone asks what you've been up to. You answer the way you always do, modestly, briefly. You mention a rental property, a flexible schedule, an investment that's been going well. You don't brag. You barely elaborate. And still, something enters the room that wasn't there 30 seconds earlier. One friend goes quiet. Another cracks a joke with a slightly harder edge than usual. A third leans back and says, "Must be nice," in a tone engineered to sound light and landing anything but. Research on social comparison, going back to psychologist Leon Festinger's foundational 1954 work, found something that holds up decades later. People don't evaluate their own success in absolute terms. They evaluate it relative to the people closest to them. A stranger's wealth means nothing to your self-image. A close friend's wealth recalibrates it instantly, whether either of you wants it to or not. That's not pettiness, it's how human psychology is built, which means the dinner isn't really about the rental property at all. It's about the math. Every person at that table just quietly ran on themselves. You notice it on the drive home, replaying the tiny moments with more attention than they probably deserve. Not because you're paranoid, but because you're finally paying attention to something you used to be too busy to see. How people respond the instant your life stops confirming what they assumed about you. Here's what nobody warns you when you're chasing financial independence. Becoming wealthier than your friends can feel less like a reward and more like slowly losing a shared language. In the beginning, you all wanted the same things: a decent income, less stress, maybe enough breathing room to stop feeling one bad month from real trouble. You complained about the same rent increases, the same bosses, the same exhausting arithmetic of adult life. Shared struggle made everything easy to talk about. Then something changed in you. Before it ever showed up in a bank account, you stopped using spending as a coping mechanism. That was the actual break, and nobody could see it happening in real time. While friends kept buying small relief, nicer dinners, a new phone every 2 years, a trip stretched across 3 credit cards, you redirected that same frustration into restraint. For years, this looked like exactly nothing. You lived in an apartment that no longer matched your income. You said no to upgrades that would have made you look successful faster. None of that gets you social credit because caution doesn't photograph. To everyone around you, it just looked like you were being careful, maybe a little boring, but boring, repeated for a decade, quietly becomes leverage. A few investments worked. Then more did. You read while other people scrolled. You built liquidity while people around you built appearances. And your financial life gradually began running on a different operating system than the lives around it. Not because you're better than anyone, but because financial behavior is rarely just financial. It's psychological. It reflects how a person handles discomfort, boredom, identity, and fear. Once your psychology changes, the money follows. And once the money changes, your relationships get forced to reveal what they were actually built on. Some friends respond with real warmth, genuinely rare and genuinely worth noticing when it happens. They ask real questions without an edge underneath them. They celebrate a win without turning it into commentary on their own life. Being around them still feels clean, but others start doing something stranger. They become accidental accountants of your life. They start tracking what you probably spend, what you probably earn, what you could probably afford. A watch you wear twice becomes a story they retell for months. A vacation becomes evidence in a case they're quietly building. And here's the part that catches you off guard. The richer they believe you are, the less permission they think you have to just be a normal, occasionally tired human being. Decline an invite and suddenly you're too busy. Split a bill evenly and you're cheap. Make a cautious call and you're calculating. Stay quiet about your finances and you're hiding something. Once someone mentally refiles you into a different financial category, they stop reading your behavior neutrally. Every ordinary action gets filtered through money. The same behavior that used to seem unremarkable now carries symbolic weight it never asked for. You remember one friend specifically, Dylan, someone who used to laugh, not cruelly, at how seriously you took investing. You have to live a little, and he'd say. Back then, his life genuinely looked better than yours. Better apartment, better stories, better weekends. There were stretches where you envied how effortlessly he seemed to enjoy things. Years later, you meet him for coffee. Nothing about him looks like a disaster. He's dressed well, still sharp, but there's a fatigue under the surface that wasn't there before. Talk drifts toward money, and you can feel something tightening underneath his words. He talks about how the system is rigged, how nobody can get ahead anymore, how investing only works for people with connections he never had. Some of what he says isn't wrong. A 2024 Pew Research survey found 72% of U.S. adults believe the economic system unfairly favors the powerful, and structural headwinds are real for plenty of people. But sitting across from him, you understand something that data alone can't fully capture. Financial struggle isn't always about foolishness. It's often about building your life around emotional relief instead of structural progress, spending to feel okay right now, avoiding the discomfort of waiting, then being surprised years later that nothing changed. This reframes how you see friendships generally. You stop measuring people only by whether they're kind or fun in ordinary moments and start noticing how they interpret someone else's discipline. Because a person's reaction to your progress reveals less about their opinion of money and more about their relationship with their own unused potential. And that's a genuinely uncomfortable thing to watch happen to someone you care about. The reactions start splitting into patterns. One friend begins asking for money without technically asking, a covered bill here, a covered flight there, help with an emergency you can genuinely afford to help with. You do it because you remember what financial stress actually feels like. But slowly, gratitude fades and quiet expectation replaces it. Your success has become an emotional ATM in someone else's mental accounting. And the moment generosity turns into an assumed obligation, something in the friendship quietly dies. Another friend becomes performative around you, insisting on paying even when it's inconvenient, casually mentioning numbers he never used to mention, working overtime to prove he's still doing fine. You eventually realize he's not really talking to you anymore. He's talking to a version of himself that feels threatened simply by being in the same room as your progress. A third friend gets strangely moral about it, suddenly vocal about greed and inequality, in a tone that sounds less like philosophy and more like disguised discomfort. His points might even be technically valid, but underneath it is the plain fact that your existence complicates a story he needed to be simple, that money changes people for the worse. You're still the same person he's always known, which forces an uncomfortable possibility. That character was always the actual variable, not the number in the account. Eventually, you make the decision most people who build real wealth quietly arrive at. You stop trying to drag every old relationship into your new season by force. That sounds harsher, stated plainly, than it actually is. You're not punishing anyone for earning less. You're just no longer negotiating with reality. Some friends can love you through growth. Some can only love you through familiarity. Once that difference becomes clear, pretending otherwise gets expensive, like not just emotionally, but strategically, because the people closest to you quietly define what feels normal. Stay surrounded by people who mock saving and glorify impulsive spending, and you'll either shrink yourself to keep the peace or spend your energy defending a life you worked hard to build. Neither one is a future worth choosing. Something unexpected happens once you stop making that trade. Life gets quieter, fewer forced conversations, fewer performative dinners where success has to be hidden, so everyone stays comfortable. At first, that quiet feels like loss. Then gradually, it starts to feel like air. Here's what almost nobody tells you about this whole process. The actual reward of financial growth was never making other people see you differently. It's seeing them clearly. You learn exactly who celebrates without comparison, who asks without entitlement, who can watch your life expand without quietly turning it into a verdict on their own. That clarity costs something real, but it's worth more than almost anything money buys directly. Wealth doesn't just change your life. It reveals the people standing around it. Some will genuinely love you through the change. Some will quietly resent you for it. Some will drift without ever meaning to. And a rare few, the ones actually worth keeping close, will let your growth give them permission to be more honest with themselves instead of more bitter. If you ever find yourself confused by why things feel strange with old friends after your finances improve, remember this. The discomfort usually isn't about greed. It's about contrast. Your calm, your margin, your lack of urgency. All of it quietly changes the emotional geometry of a relationship built in a completely different weather system. Some people adjust, some resist, some disappear. That's not always a tragedy. Sometimes it's just a delayed truth, finally arriving on time. And the most mature response isn't bitterness, and it isn't performance either. It's staying kind, staying private, letting the money make you freer, not louder. Because if you built it the right way, the money never made you worthy of anything. It just revealed what you were already willing to do, patiently, for a future nobody else could see yet. That's the whole story, not the number, the discipline that quietly sat underneath it the entire time. If this resonated with something you've been feeling but couldn't quite put into words, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below. It genuinely helps me understand what to dig into next.